Yes, hello again. Welcome to another video for the simulator controller software. Today we have a very special topic which addresses all the stuff you need if you're working with modded cars in Setup Corsa, for example. And if you want to extend the strategy workbench and provide the car meta data information to simulator controllers so everything works as expected. Welcome also to Mirko, who is part of the auditorium here at Discord. He will, yeah, accompany the session. Maybe he has some questions, and he is also working with car mods in AC, so it will be very interesting. Okay, let's start. You probably know that the tool Setup Workbench is capable of working with setup issues and even is capable of editing setups for those simulators which support an open setup file format, which is at the moment unfortunately only AC and ACC. Hopefully there will be future sims which also support an open setup file format. But Setup Corsa is the most interesting one because it's also quite open for car mods, for additions made by the community and so on. I already have created a lot of car definitions in the past with the recent releases. For example, you can see here the list of all cars that are already supported. Although it's a very long list, it's not that's not all cars that are available in the standard edition. I'm still trying to catch up with all the cars that are available there. And it's definitely not any information for car mods or cars you can buy and so on. And today I will try to show you how to create your own car definition so that you are not have to wait until I have added the car, or yeah, maybe it will never happen if it's a very unknown car. So there are several steps to introduce a new car to simulator controller. Let's start with the very first step. It's a very simple one, and yeah, in fact, it only introduces the name for the car and the number of tire compounds you can work with, or the engineer of the AI assistants can work with. Um, to do this, you must take a look at a special directory. It's can be found in your documents folder, there in the simulator controller folder where all the user stuff resides, so your data files. And there is a special folder simulator data where all these, yeah, the meta information for cars, tracks, tire compounds, and so are stored for the different sims. Normally, this folder will be empty because everything is provided in the standard edition. And as long as you're, for example, using a Setup Corsa Competizione where the number of cars are fixed, you are fine. But as I said, for AC, the old Assetto Corsa, you can provide your own definitions here. And after you have done that, simulator controller knows about this special car. Okay, if you open up this file, you will find the directories for the different sims which are currently supported. And we would want to take a look here in the directory for AC. There's one file already in there. It's named track data. The software records every track you have driven already on and collects the names here in this file. Nothing you have to extend on your own, but you can place additional files here And we will do this right now. These two special files, cardata.ini and tiredata.ini, contain the information about a car, one or more cars you want to add to the metadata information, and the same holds true for tire data. Let's take a look at the cardata.ini. It's very simple. It introduces the so-called car codes. A car code is an internal name of a car used in Assetto Corsa. Where can you find those car codes? It's very simple. You can take a look in the Assetto Corsa folder, in your documents folder, and there you will find a setups folder, and there you will find all car codes as directories for all the cars you have driven already in Assetto Corsa. So if you are looking for the car code for a new car, for example, let's take this one, TCR link. This folder will contain all the data, setup files and stuff like that Assetto Corsa uses internally for this car. And the car code here is this name. So car names will be displayed in several areas of my software, and this car code is quite cryptical, so maybe you want to have a nice name, and this can be done here with these two definitions. In the car codes area, you associate a car code with a visible name, and in the car names section you will do the vice versa, associate a visible name with a car code. So using these two definitions, the software can translate in both directions between visible names and car names. And the same here for the Formula Hybrid. This is the car we want to use for the examples today. And also here an entry for the visible name to car code and vice versa. The second thing you will find here is an information for the pit stop settings. The pit stop settings is used by the race engineer to understand what pit stop options are available, and the most important one is the minimum tire pressure. Whenever the race engineer will set a tire pressure, he must know what the minimum value is he can set, and this is different for almost every car. For example, the Lynk has a minimum tire pressure of 16, and the Formula Hybrid 2023 has 16 at the front and 15 at the rear. Okay, where can you find that? It's quite easy. You go to the setup screen for the given car, there to the tire section, and the minimum tire pressure is the one you will have displayed if you choose the slider completely to the left. Okay, this must be entered as well for each car. The car settings here is a very special one. There are a few cars in Assetto Corsa which introduce additional options in the pit stop dialog. For example, changing the front wing angle at a pit stop is possible for a couple of Formula cars, and this value here is either false, which means there is no such special option, or an integer number from 1 to x, and x is the number of different options which are available additionally in the pit stop dialog. So this is the introduction of a new car with its name, and the second file here, the tiredata.ini. let you define the available tire compounds a given car has. Once again, take a look here at the setup area for tires of the Formula Hybrid car. It has 5 different tire compounds from ultra soft to hard, from C5 to C1. And this rule here maps the internal tire compounds of Assetto Corsa. These are these names here, as you can see here, soft C3, to the standardized tire compound names of simulator controller. It is very recommended to read the documentation here about tire compounds in the documentation wiki. The section here regarding compound rules define the standard tire compound names simulator controller is using. These tire compound names are independent of a simulator. They can be used in Assetto Corsa Competizione or in R Factor 2 and so on. And a mapping rule always maps an internal name to one of the standardized names. And you can have, as you can see here, different mappings separated by semicolons. And if we go back here and take a look, we define a tire compound rule FH23, which is now then used for the Formula Hybrid 2023 for all tracks. This asterisk says that this rule is applicable to all tracks, otherwise you can name a specific track here. Okay, once you have done that, simulator controller and especially the race engineer can handle the different tire compounds for this car, and the car will be displayed with its nice name, for example, in a race report and so on. This has nothing to do yet with the setup workbench. We will come to that in a few moments. But this is the first necessary step to introduce a new car to the simulator controller software. Okay.
May I interrupt you for one question?
Yes, go on.
Um, uh, so these are basically the standard files defining the some basic codes for the cars. And can you please just explain the structure of the file? For example, we are going to use same file for adding and modifying later, and adding maybe, I don't know, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 15 new car specifications. So um, it's always like car codes in the brackets, and below we are putting the code and the name of the, and then goes car name. Or
Yeah.
this structure really mandatory, or it's going to happen if there is, for example, first car names, then car codes and pit stop settings?
Okay. No, you can change the order, and you can even do it like this. For example, you can duplicate the car codes section header for each car, but it's not necessary. But you have to name the section header and then followed by the definition which is expected for this kind of section.
Okay, okay, understand.
Yeah.
Now it looks simple because there are only like two cars, but
Yeah.
trying to imagine when you're going to have like maybe 10 or 15 different uh, metadata for the new cars, and it can be quite a long file in the
Yes.
some near future.
I can show you just for entertainment, the standard definition, which introduces the, let's say, 40 to 50 cars I already have defined. Let's take a look. It's in the distribution folder, simulator data, SCC. Here we go. And yeah, it's quite long, as you can see. But it's always the same. Just one line in car code, a corresponding line in car names,
Yeah.
and the definition of the pit stop settings.
Okay, and that makes sense. This kind of structure, it really makes sense. Like some kind of sections where you are just adding necessary data every time you're adding the new car.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So now we have done that. And now we want to have this car visible in the setup workbench. It maybe automatically will get visible once you have driven the car, but the setup workbench has no special knowledge about this particular car and will use the generic settings which are available or have been defined for Assetto Corsa. It is possible, however, to define the metadata for example, the Formula Hybrid, which is a kind of very special car. It's not a free mod, it's a paid mod, but very with very detailed graphics and also very detailed physics, and also a lot of non-standard setup options which are not typically available in Assetto Corsa. And if you want to work with this kind of setup options, there are ways to extend the setup workbench, and we will do this now step by step. The first step we want to do is to introduce the car as simple as possible, which means no definition for the special setup options, but we want to have it available in the list of supported cars for setup file definition. Okay, I prepared also this step. And to introduce a new car to the setup workbench, there's also a special folder here in the Documents Simulator Controller folder. It's a sub area of the garage. There are two subfolders, definitions and rules. And for each car, you have to provide one definition file. And for each car, you have to provide one rules file. We will open them in a few seconds and take a look what's going on there. But before we do this, we will now have a look here at the cars. You don't see the TCR car and the Formula Hybrid at the moment, but we can trigger a reload of the car metadata by switching the simulator, going back to Assetto Corsa. And now they are there. They are loaded here from your special extension directory where you can place your own cars. Okay, let's start with the definition. A definition file looks like this. To understand this, I will give you also a recommendation for something to read. There is in the Setup Workbench documentation, that's documentation chapter for the Setup Workbench, there is a special section which gives you a lot of information about how to introduce new car specifications, and also there is a documentation how all these settings handlers work. So everything we will talk about now, you can read here about in the documentation on your own. The idea is very simple. For every setting which you can typically modify in a car setup, you will have the name of the setting and a so-called handler. The handler is a definition how the setup workbench may work with the given setting. Okay, for this car, our Formula Hybrid 2023, this line says, okay, we have no traction control, but we have an ABS option, and it has 2 clicks from 0 to 1. We have a brake balance setup option. It is an integer value stepped by 1 with a base value of 0, and it has a range of values starting from 46 to 64. Once again, a short look into the documentation. The different handlers you can use are described here with their different options. But the main question is, when should I use which kind of, let's say, handler? This heavily depends on the range of values the given setup option can take for the given car. And here again, you have to go to the sim, for example here Assetto Corsa, and take a look at the setup options in the setup dialog of Assetto Corsa. Go fully to the left for a given setup option. Here the wheel rate is the spring value. Go fully to the right, then you have the left and right value, and you can also see which increment is applied at each step of change. And if we go here, for example here spring rate, front left, it has a step value 5, starts at 100 and goes up to 200, and as you can see here 140 is quite in the middle, and this is the way you define the range of possible values and the steps taken for each of the setup options. The list of options we see here are the standard options as supplied by Assetto Corsa for most of the standard cars. Not all the options are always available, so you can set them to false if they are not available in the setup dialog of Assetto Corsa. But now if we have done this, if we have created this file, we already can work with setups for this given car. If we go to the setup editor, let's see where it is. Oh, I don't have a setup file. That's that's sad. Okay.
But most probably you have like a generic under a folder generic. There should be one generic setup file.
Okay. Where do I find this folder?
So you need to find the um, RSS formula hybrid. So setups,
Ah, okay.
vars,
Yeah, okay.
yeah,
Setups.
yeah, and here should be generic. Yeah.
Okay. So, thank you very, very much. Okay, so now you see here on the right side the generic last.ini file we just loaded. And you see here the human readable translation of this technical representation. And for example, if we go here to the spring rate, we see here 140 as it was here. And we can change it now, decrease, step by 5, go fully down to 100. We cannot lower it anymore, and we can go fully up to 200, and there is no more room to increase it. So that's the thing this handler is doing. And if we take a look here at the setup file, spring rate, left front, value 200, as we just have changed here. And now we can save the setup file as a modified one, and yeah, that's the way the setup workbench is working, and there are already other videos, so I don't want to go any deeper into it. Let's go back here. Um, as you can see, these are all the standard settings, but yeah, Mirko, you know the Formula Hybrid car has a lot of more very special setup options, and these are not already present here because that's the next step, how to introduce those additional setups settings.
Well, before we get into the special one, I just want to let's say point out one specific uh, thing about the increments. Just came to my mind, and I can now remember only about the brake balance. I don't know the reason behind this situation, but for example, in the setup menu, when you're game and you're changing the setup settings, for example, brake balance, as we defined here, integer handle space 0 and increment 1. That's what you can do um, in the setup menu. But this is also the setup settings which can change while driving if you bend, let's say, the rotary or some buttons on your wheel. And I think for Formula Hybrid, then the increment actually in game is 0.5. And for example, I can now remember for another RSS car, LMBH, BMW, now the new car, I can remember that this increment is actually 0.2, something like that in game. But when you're in the setup, uh, then like we defined here, it's increment 1. I don't know if that's make any difference for this purpose, but just want to point out this specific uh, thing about the Assetto Corsa, and I really don't know the reason behind that.
Okay, that's really interesting, something I didn't know. In this case, it would be yeah, if the system can work with, for example, 46.5 here, it would
Yes.
be better to use a decimal handler like this one and set the increment to 1.0. That's the way it's working here. So that in case you load a setup file which has, for example, 46.5, the system understands how to handle it. It would otherwise throw an error because it will expect an integer here. But it's a very special topic you mentioned. Um,
I would say for our case and to work with the Setup Workbench app, I think we have to stick with those increments which are allowed during the setup menu
mhm.
in game, because if you now want to change the setup and save like a new file, and you will have the break balance, for example, 55.5. I'm not sure that when you actually load the setup in game, I'm not sure if this is going to be, you know, the real value
Yeah,
of the break balance. Well, we need to test that. But now, when I was listening, it just came to my mind. But I remember that when I'm changing while driving, it's not one increment, it's 0.5, and for some other cars, it's even less, like
yeah,
0.2. So really fine tuning. Um, Maybe in the future it will make some benefits for
yeah.
some teams, but for now, I think we need to stick with what's general setup setting is.
Hmm. Okay. Yeah, let's move on. Um, okay, this is the way how you have to define all the standard settings. Another thing I want to take a look at is how the setup workbench will work with the available settings in with regards to handling issues. And for example, you can see here the car has no traction control. So for example, if you define a handling issue, let's say oversteer at corner exit of slow corners, normally for a car with traction control, you will also see here a setup recommendation to increase the traction control in the case of oversteer events on slow corners, which is typically can be handled by increasing the traction control. But the system knows that for the Formula Hybrid car, no traction control is available, and there is therefore no yeah, no recommendation to do that. And yes, to introduce those available um, settings to the rule engine behind a Setup Workbench, every car has a so-called rule file. And in the simple example of our current step, this rule file only removes those settings which are not available for the given car from the list of standard settings. It's typically the same list of the settings you have set to false here. So, as a rule of thumb, for every setting which is not available and you have set it to false in the definition file, define it as a list of removed settings here in the rule file. The rule file will contain more information in a later step, but for our current very simple introduction of the Formula Hybrid car to the Setup Workbench, we only have to remove those settings of this car from the set of available settings for setup recommendations. So that's it for the first step, to introduce the car to the Setup Workbench. And now let's come to more fun part. The Formula Hybrid car has a very complex aerodynamic setting. Normally, the standard Assetto Corsa definition has a front wing and a rear wing, or a front splitter and a rear wing, but the Formula Hybrid car has several available nose configurations which influence the downforce at the front, and it also has several available rear wing configurations. You will even see if you change this in the setup editor how the rear wing changes its shape. And for each of the configuration, you also have fine-tuning available, ranging from minus 14, I think, up to plus 14, which means that you change the angle of different elements of the nose or the rear wing. And we will now introduce this one to our definition. And this will get a little bit more complicated. So I will now substitute the rule file with the next version. And I will also substitute the definition file with the next version. And let's open them again and take a look what's going on. Okay, it has got a little bit more complicated. First of all, we are introducing new settings for the setup, settings that are not known before to typical Assetto Corsa cars. Again, the structure, how you define those stuff, or this stuff, is very, very well documented in the wiki. Just as a short one, for this means we introduce new settings in the aero section. We have a front wing which has a config option and an offset option, and we have a rear wing which has also a config option and an offset option. And this one, just to have it the same as standard, in the aero section we also have the ride height at the front and the rear. Then we define language-specific labels for the different new options we are introducing, and we map those options to elements in the standard setup file of Assetto Corsa. Yes, this is a little bit tricky one. You must take a look at the setup editor of Assetto Corsa, change some values, save the setup, open the setup file, and try to find the field which just changed with regards to this setting. And then you have to define the mapping between the logical setup option as used by the Setup Workbench to the field used in the setup file of Assetto Corsa. The handler section is more or less the same, but I introduced new handlers for the aerodynamics elements, nose configuration, rear wing configuration, and the fine tuning. And yeah, as you can see, the nose config has 2 clicks, the rear config has 3 clicks, and and the front offset is ranging from -10 to 10, and the rear offset is ranging from -2 to 2. Okay, let's take a look how this works in the Setup Workbench. Reloading the definition. And here you go. Front wing configuration, offset, rear wing configuration, offset, everything there. Just one click here, 2 clicks here. No, the offset 10 plus, 10 minus, and the rear wing 2 clicks as defined. So let's take a look at the rule file we also have dropped for the new version. And now we have the same section as before. The settings we are removing from the set of available setup options. But now we add additional settings, and these are the new 4 aerodynamic options as just introduced here in the ini file. This means that now the setup workbench, when you have a handling issue, for example, we have an understeer event on fast corner entry. What's going on here? I'm puzzled because I will run it again. It looks like he didn't load the rule file. Sorry. I'm seeing a little problem here. I do not understand at the moment. Okay, maybe I have an error here and it's cleared in the next step. Let's wait for it. So normally it should show here changes in the aerodynamics for an oversteer event, but I don't know what's happening now, right now. So let's go to the next step. No, it's totally right what's going on here. Haha. Okay, we introduced the settings, but the system does not know how to derive the setting values for the the changes he wants to make for the given handling issues. And that's exactly the next step. And now, sorry for that, it's getting a little bit complicated. Step 4 now is to extend the rule system to define rules how to handle these new settings. I copy the files. Definitions, I think it's the same as before, but just to be sure. Okay, switch the car. Go back. Understeer, corner entry of fast corners. And now we have everything we want to see. He wants to change the front wing configuration, increase the downforce and also the front wing offset so that we have more front grip aerodynamic front grip. So the Setup Workbench now knows how to handle these new settings we just introduced. And here's the magic going on, and this is something you really have to dig into. There are a lot of rules for different kind of handling issues which define how to change the given setting and how to change it in which direction. Let's take uh, one or two examples here. If we have a problem with a speed on straight lines, which is something like this: speed, straight line speed, and it's very severe, which means the recommendation here is to go to a lower rear wing configuration and also to reduce the rear wing angle. And the rule which is doing this is this and this one. We have a correction value for the straight line speed, which results in changing the setting of the rear wing offset by -1. And if the value of the correction is greater than 50, this is this slider here, it ranges from 0 to 100, and it's the severity of the given problem, of the given handling issue. And more than 50 means it's very severe and very pronounced. It does not only reduce rear wing angle using the offset setting, but also will go to a completely different rear wing configuration. So if we have a very not so pronounced handling problem, it will only introduce a small change of the angle of the rear wing. But if it's very pronounced, it will recommend a complete different rear wing configuration. You can define any number of rules. You can make it as fine-grained as you want. But as you can see, you will have different effects for different kind of handling issues. Understeer on corner entry of fast corners, oversteer events, as here above, straight line speed, corner speed at the apex, and everything can be attacked with aerodynamic changes. And yes, you have to know what to do here. It takes a lot of experience, but once you have defined your rules, the setup workbench can combine those setup changes not only for one handling issue, but, and that's the magic here, with a lot of handling issues you might have with different severities. And that's the recommendation the workbench has computed with the rule set. And now you go to your setup file. Oops, where was it? Generic. And apply it. Let's start with a lower value of, and here is the resulting setup changes, which might have a positive impact on this handling issues. Okay, that was step number 4. Everything clear so far?
Well, yes, it's clear. I think we get into the really most advanced details about what all of us sim racers want to get from some application, some software, and basically, I'm also now realizing that uh, there needs to be a person behind those rules who really understand the setup, the handling of the car, and to give the good recommendations what to do with like you said with basic Assetto Corsa settings. There is more or less clear to most of us, but when it comes to really more advanced car modes like this one or many other which has really advanced physics, then we are having really a lot of troubles, and we are
Yeah.
always seeking for some magical solutions and AI or anything to help us to understand what to do and how to avoid some common mistakes and traps with changing some things on the cars. And usually after 1 or 2 hours you are ending with the worst possible car handling and go back at the beginning.
Yeah.
So yeah, well, probably with time we will get into why I was asking you for this particular car is because yeah, I'm driving it a lot and in championships and so on. But also this is really one of the most advanced and most complicated. And once we figure out all those rules and how to do it, then I'm sure the database will grow up quite quickly with other cars, and it could be helpful for people because I think most people really get stuck
Yes,
here.
yes, for sure. I'm totally with you. This is an expert topic, and what we are currently doing is definitely something for an engineer-like person. Um, but to the rescue, uh, all the standard settings for all the standard handling issues are already predefined. So what you have seen here, the rules for the new four new settings we introduced for the Formula Hybrid, there are hundreds of rules already defined for all the standard settings, and you don't have to tackle them. They are just there and they work. But if you introduce a modded car with new setup types, yes, you need to know what you're doing. That's right.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's a good introduction to our next and our last step, step number 5. The Formula Hybrid, as the name suggests, is a hybrid car, and it has also an electric motor and battery. And there might be issues with the application of the electrical system, and we want the setup workbench to understand that stuff as well. And that's the next step. Um, as before, let's copy the files here. We have a changed ini file, and we have a changed rule file. First, let's take a look what's happening in Setup Workbench. Switching cars to reload. So, the first change, we have a new item here named battery usage, and the issue here is that the battery usage is too low or it is too high, which means you either don't consume your complete battery capacity, which is not good because then you do not use the full capability of your car. Or on the other hand, if the battery usage is too high, you will run out of juice, for example, to overtake on the long straight. Let's take a look here. We will have this problem. And yes, it's the recommendation is simple. If your battery usage is too high, decrease your battery usage. That's an easy one. Um, the trick here is how it maps to the setting. And let's reload this one. And now we have here a new element in the electronics section, and it names different setting values. And if you take a look at the setup screen in ACC for this car, the delivery mode of the kinetic motor has different settings. One of it is balanced, the other ones are low, build, no deploy, and at the other end of extreme is attack, which might be useful in qualifying. So currently it is balanced, but we saw the battery usage is too high even in balanced setting, and now we apply the change and it says, okay, set the MGUK delivery mode to low to compensate for the problem. Okay, this is what the setup workbench is doing, and now take a look at the definition file first, how to introduce the new stuff. As before, as we have introduced new settings, here for example the arrow, we introduce a new workbench characteristic. This is the characteristic is this one here. Where is it? This one. This is the characteristic. And it has the depletion handling or issue with too low or too high depletion. We have, as before, translations for that. And we introduce a new element in the electronics category of the settings. Traction control is not there because the car does not have traction control. It has ABS, and now it has also the MGUK delivery as a setting option in the electronics section. Translation here for different languages, and we have a new mapping for this new setting, and we have a delivery a setting handler for this setting. It's an enumeration. It is mapped based on 0 with an increment on 1 to the setup file in Assetto Corsa. The values in the setup file of Assetto Corsa can only be numbers, but the different numbers are mapped to strings no deploy, build, low, balanced, high, and attack, as we have seen here. Okay, that's the definition part, and now to the rule part. We are adding a new characteristic, or two new, battery depletion low, battery depletion high, so that the setup workbench knows how to work in the rule system with that. And we are adding two new very simple rules. If we have a correction value for depletion low, we change the setting of the delivery mode by +1, so we want to use the battery more. And if we have too high depletion, we decrease the setting value for the delivery mode, thereby using the battery less. That's it. So that's all. Yes, and as I said, that's it. I'm done. Hopefully this helps in understanding the things that are going on there. Yeah, to get a little bit to step a little bit back. For most cars, for most modded cars, you don't need the higher steps we just discussed because almost all modded cars map to the standard settings of Assetto Corsa, which are already defined in the setup workbench, and you only have to supply the setting handlers for them, as we have seen at the beginning of the section, only for complex modded cars which introduce new settings and new kind of objects you may work with in your handling or usage issues. You may have to introduce the more complex rules we have seen before. So, Mirko, any questions remaining?
Maybe just one question which can be related to maybe some future steps. But I'm just thinking about can those definitions about the car, can this actually also translate into the like race conditions? So with race central app. I'll try to give you an example. For example, the last topic, the battery, which is really specific specification and setting for hybrid cars. Um, Most probably it won't make too much sense about changing the setup because this is really
Yeah,
dynamic thing which you have to apply during the race and changing maybe those modes which the car is working, like formal hybrid has those presets, no deploy, low, high, medium, and so
yeah.
on. Can these be used maybe in the future for the like race conditions where sometimes where you really cannot follow what's the level of your current state, battery state. So maybe the race engineer can just warn you, okay, you are using the battery too low, or you have the free, battery to use
Yeah,
in something like that.
yeah, it's possible, but it is even more complicated than the things we just discussed. The
Yeah,
race
okay.
engineer is also using the same rule engine, and you
Okay.
can extend the capabilities of the race engineer by defining new rules. You can also define new voice commands to interact with the race engineer. And you can also connect the race engineer using the session database, for example, to positions on the track, to issues events. For example, if you want to always deliver all your battery stuff on the main straight, you can define a track automation, for example. Where you define different events depending on the position on the track and sending hotkeys to the application where the application reacts to that. But
Okay,
the,
yeah,
the,
that's one good example how these rules we now defined can actually have some impact in the race conditions. Well, battery, it's really specific issue, but what I can say from my racing experience, especially if you're in the traffic and you're really focused on what's going on around you, and usually uh, you don't notice that maybe there is a little bit of battery left per lap. Well, maybe just to explain that this car and how the system in Formula series is working. You have like a maximum capacity of the battery, and you have like a maximum energy allowed to spend per lap.
Yeah, yeah,
And then usually when you are racing, maybe you are not using the full potential of the energy which you can use during one lap.
yeah.
And then, okay, that can be maybe few, maybe not even 1/10 or something, but
Yeah.
I know the people are always looking for every part of the seconds.
Yes, as I said, this can be done, but it's complicated like hell. You
Yeah.
can introduce your own rules for the race engineer. And if we take at the rules which are already there, it's quite complicated.
Yeah.
But for example, let's take
This
a
will be next video.
Genau, here, for example, there's a rule section about fuel target, where the engineer constantly observes your fuel consumption and calculates how many laps are remaining and how many fuel you might need to refuel at the next pit stop. And you can introduce, for example, or me, I can introduce a new rule set for battery depletion. And
Yeah, that's
then
very similar. That's
yeah,
very similar.
yeah, and then the engineer will be aware of battery depletion and might suggest changing any settings during runtime. This can be done, but it's very deep inside the software.
Yeah, just an idea for the future
Yeah,
improvements of the
yeah,
system.
yeah, yeah. Okay, so now we're just already over an hour. So thank you for participating and helping making things clear. And to all the of you who are watching the video, thank you for your interest in the software and see you next time. Bye bye.
Bye bye.